What's up everyone, Tom from the Airsoft headquarters here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive on the Elite Force M9 pistols. Now these are going to be the CO2 full blowback models that have been on the market for a couple of years now. The Elite Force M92A1 has been on the market for the longest period. At this point has been around for 7 or 8 years, and the 92A1 has been around for the last 2 years. Which I find a little odd that there has been a low number of videos dedicated to these pistols specifically. For how long they've been around, I'm surprised not more people have made videos about them, especially given how iconic they are, and especially how prevalent they have been to our armed forces. So what we're going to do is we're going to dedicate this video as to some of the pros, some of the cons, some of the features, some of the performance of the M9 pistol specifically, and give them their righteous dues. So go ahead, strap in, get comfortable, because we're going to do a deep dive. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the M9A3. But I do need to make a very quick note directly off the bat as to some very small details about these specifically. There are going to be certain Beretta fans that are going to say that these are not official replicas. They are officially licensed. This is the M92A1 and this is the M9A3. However, for the Airsoft and Steel BB model specifically, these are going to have a full auto switch. Now, compared to the real Berettas, there are going to be different designations that are going to identify the different firing modes between different Beretta pistols. So these are not exact replicas to the M92A1 or the M9A3. As long as we're clear about that these are not 100%, but they are going to be 99% the way there, we can move on. So starting off with the M92A1. This has been a service pistol to the United States Armed Forces as well as other armed forces around the world for many years. With the Airsoft model specifically, this is going to be a full metal slide assembly and a full metal frame assembly, which means that the slide, the barrel, the hammer, irons, safety switch, different takedown levers, slide release, the frame, trigger, magazine release are all going to be full metal. Even the internals are all going to be all metal as well. The only polymer part is going to be these very thin grips that are going to sit on the side of the frame specifically. Those are the parts that are going to separate your hand from the metal frame. It is going to add extra texturing for, ease of handling, ease of use. If you're someone that gets a little sweaty on the airsoft field and can get sweaty palms, the texturing on there is going to allow this to stay firmly in your hand as long as you're holding it and not slide around too much, which I enjoy. On the very top of the slide, which actually I should mention, on all of these we are going to go tip to butt, because I know that some people do enjoy when that is stated. With the M92A1, from Elite Force specifically, there are going to be other models that have threaded barrels. The M92A1 from Elite Force is going to be utilizing a slightly extended barrel system with that orange tip painted on there. So you cannot add different types of muzzle devices, amplifiers, or tracer units if you wanted to have that as an option. You are stuck with it as is. I would also make mention that it is going to be very difficult to remove that orange tip if you did want to make it a black barrel or something like that. My best suggestion would be to get a little bit of spray paint or hand paint a little bit of black paint on that. Spring guide is going to be sticking out just below that barrel system. That's going to be full metal and give you plenty of spring back forward to get that slide back into action. These are going to be utilizing a dual spring system, which means there is one type of spring, a spacer, and then a second type of spring to allow different types of force going forward, which has been very effective. The entire slide system that has the very iconic large cut window for that barrel to sit inside of. Within the real firearms, I don't have an exact reason as to why they would have that large cut. I would have to assume it is to make that slide operation way smoother, way faster, as well as cool that barrel assembly so it can take a higher volume of fire. I'm just assuming, best educated guess, for the airsoft pistol, we're not too concerned about our barrel heating up because we're not having small explosions contained inside there. But the fact that it is carved out significantly does mean that that slide is going to cycle very, very fast, especially given the fact that this does have full auto. We have had these shoot at a rate of fire of up to 20 rounds a second with that full auto. So it does make it very snappy in order to fire and get behind. Going backwards on that slide, we do have the Puerto Beretta licensing on the left-hand side here. On the right-hand side of the slide, we do have the Elite Force/Umarex warning label, which is very large and very upfront. They want to make sure you know what you are getting and some of those safety features, but we got to keep it on there. It's a little gaudy, personally, but you know, it's something that we do have to live with. We do have some texturing on the very back of the slide here, right in front of that safety switch, which is going to be ambidextrous, which does make it easy to, you know, get your thumb and hold onto. In my opinion specifically, it is a very odd angle for me to have to utilize, especially in a quick action. I find it personally easier in order to get the joints of my thumb and my hand against the safety switches on the slide and use that as a leverage to pull that slide backwards. Or with the bevels on the very front of the slide, I'll use again my thumb and the rest of my hand in order to press against that, in order to chamber press that, or chamber check, press check, whatever you want to call that action, in order to press that slide backwards. So while they do have the stippling back there in order to make that action easier, they probably actually intended for the hand over the chamber, which I practice things a little bit differently. So you have different methods to get that slide backwards. With the M92A1, they are utilizing a 3-dot iron sight system, which are not adjustable. They are integrated into that slide, not changeable. So you can't adjust those at all. Like I said, ambidextrous safety controls. And with the M92A1 specifically, that safety does work as a decocker. At least it's supposed to work as a decocker. Timeout, let me go get a fully functional Beretta and show you exactly what it's supposed to look like. Newer Beretta, lock that back, slide forward, that safety all the way back to the rear, and that is going to drop that hammer forward without firing a shot and resetting that trigger forward. If you even want proof that it is not going to fire around, I do have a gassed magazine. So, but then fire, down to semi. All right, so we rock that slide forward, hit that safety all the way downward, and there we go, without a shot being fired. Keep that here, original magazine. I'm just gonna put it on the side there. Utilizing this model still, metal hammer assembly, and with that hammer assembly on the M9 specifically, it is going to be a single or a double action, which means you can pull that trigger backwards and it is going to engage that hammer assembly, which means if you have a BB chambered, that hammer can sit all the way forward and you can engage that hammer, engaging the firing system, and then creates a shot. Example. That's all the way forward. We have a shot. Back forward. We're going to reset that hammer, slide that in, and another shot. So there are a couple of safety features with that specifically. So there are certain carrying methods for having that hammer forward but a BB in the chamber for you to get that double action shot. And that is it as far as the slide assembly. Going downwards, we do have the metal slide release. Very easy, enlarged, in my opinion. I can easily get my thumb up there and get that slide to rock forward. We do have the takedown pin, takedown lever, takedown switch, whatever you guys want to call that. There are a couple different names for it. And then going back forward, we do have 2 slots for Picatinny, which means if you have any type of flashlight or laser system that you want to put onto there, or maybe even a pistol grenade launcher, that can slide and fit on there. Just a couple of thoughts. Going backwards, we do have the enlarged trigger guard. This is intended to make, people that have gloves on their fingers way easier, especially if that trigger is reset forward, for them to stick their gloved finger inside of there and wrap their finger around the trigger in order to squeeze it completely. We have the metal trigger, which on the M9 pistol specifically has a lot of travel behind it. Let me show you an example of that. Make sure I've got a clean white background. So I put my finger inside there. That gets the hammer going, but I need to reset that trigger all the way forward in order to get it to work. Compared to if I operate that slide, that trigger is going to knock itself backwards in relation to that hammer, which means I have way less travel and way less weight that I need to press downward in order to get that hammer to fire. Likewise, on semi-automatic, that trigger or that hammer is going to retain backwards, which means I don't need to go nearly as far in order to re-engage that hammer. So I can in fact spam that trigger way easier compared to a lot of other models on the market. There are some that utilize a similar system to this, but for an older style of pistol, this was certainly way easier to actually, have repetitive follow-up shots at a higher speed. Continuing backwards, we do have those textured grips on the left and right hand side of the grip itself. They don't wrap around to the back here. That is going to be metal with those large serrations on the very back there to add extra texturing. We have 2 screws on either side of the grip in order to hold that grip to that frame. On the right side of the frame specifically, this is going to hold your trigger reset assembly or your hammer reset assembly. So keep that grip on the right hand side of the pistol in order to make sure that none of those parts and components, because they are spring loaded, will pop and fly out of that frame. That's it. We have your selector switch, which is a little bit smaller, and I like the fact that it is a very low profile selector switch, right? It's not super large. It's not in the way of your normal manual of arms. So as I rock this back and forth in my hand, I'm not going to accidentally get that semi-automatic switch all the way up into full auto. I have to be very, very direct with my actions to get a fingernail underneath there and push that lever up into full auto. It's very low profile. It's not going to catch itself. Should I move my hand around like this, again, I have to be very direct and move that full auto switch down into semi-automatic, which again, very low profile. It's not going to get accidentally switched. Very convenient. I like that a lot. That way, you're not playing a standard CQB game or even an outdoor game that doesn't allow full auto, and you're not going to accidentally overshoot someone, especially in those super stressful environments where you're having that instinctive gut reaction to pull from a holster and try to engage someone. The magazine is going to be 23 plus 1 in the chamber, right? Yes, 23 plus 1. So that is going to be, a large double stack capacity. Very competitive with a lot of other double stack style pistols on the market. CO2 powered, 12 gram CO2 canister on the very bottom there. All metal, super solid. There's no crazy base plate that you could possibly drop and smash and break. Very solid single piece construction. other than the feed lips, which are going to be a standard polymer, because they have to be polymer, because that's just how airsoft magazines are. The M92A1 specifically does have a 40 round extended magazine option for you to slide, rock in place, and then you do have that extended magazine carrying option, which is going to be a carrying capacity of 40 plus 1. So you are almost completely doubling your BB capacity by getting that extended magazine. It also just makes it a lot more fun on full auto to rip through 40 rounds compared to just a standard 22. So very awesome that they do have that available to the market. And this is going to be compatible just to the M92A1 in our testing and our experience. So we're going to leave that off to the side there. We are all done with that overview on that guy specifically. Now we're going to transfer over to the M9A3. The M9A3 from Beretta is going to be the Beretta model that was given to the US Army as far as an example as to what could be utilized for the new US service pistol. Like I said, for the longest time, the M92 or the M9 was a service pistol, so Beretta obviously wanted to continue that tradition, and so this is their model that they went with, or at least a close replica with that, with the exception of the full auto switch. So one of the necessities to the new service pistol was the fact that it did need to be a polymer frame. And tan was the new modern coloration, so that is what they went with this guy. There is not a whole lot of difference as far as the manual of arms from the M93 to the M92A1, but there are going to be a few small cosmetic or utilitarian additions to the M9A3 that makes it a little bit better. So starting again, tip to butt on the M9A3, we do have the orange tip, which is actually going to be a threaded barrel extension. And then we do have the barrel, which does extend about a 1/4 inch from the end of that slide system. So you do have options as far as tracer units or muzzle devices there. A metal spring guide rod, in fact, the same exact spring guide rod that is used on the M92A1. A metal slide assembly, a metal barrel, metal iron sights, which the front is actually removable. So you can change that out for something else if you want to. I don't know how compatible they are with anything else on the market. The same safety selector switch on the rear of the slide here. This one, however, does not have a functioning decocker for that safety selection. So even if I rock this safety back and forth, it is not going to get that hammer all the way back forward. Put it on safe. Even if I pull the trigger, it's not going to work that hammer back forward. I would need to remove that magazine to make sure that the propellant system is away from the actual replica. Pull that trigger to get that hammer forward. Reinsert the magazine. Get that switch down-ish. It'll stay down in a partial position, but if memory serves me correctly, because we don't have any that are technically brand new of these either, these do not like the fact that you can put the safety down if the hammer is not all the way backwards. So there's a small little safety concern there personally. If the fact that the hammer is forward, cool that it's not going to strike anything. But if that safety is not engaged, that means I can still pull the trigger all the way and get a shot off. But it's airsoft, so if there was a negligent discharge, damage is going to be very minimal. And again, I don't know how closely that replicates the function to the real firearm. But once that hammer is back, very easy to get that safety back and forth. A metal hammer, internally metal hammer assembly, going down to the frame, a metal slide release, which is going to be right hand operated only. Nothing on the left hand side or for left-handed individuals. Your takedown lever, which is going to be on the left hand side of the frame. Nothing on the right hand side of the frame for left-handed people. The very front of the frame is going to have 3 individual Picatinny slots, which means you do have a little bit more options when it comes to different makes and models of flashlights and laser accessories. That was 1 plus for the M93. Again, an enlarged trigger guard. A very similar, if not the same, trigger design, which again is going to be metal on the M9A3. Again, same exact function. The magazine release is going to be polymer. And a fun fact, these can be switched back and forth to make them ambidextrous. So out of the box, they are going to come for right-hand shooters, which means you're going to hit that magazine release on the right-hand side, and that's going to slide the magazine out. Nothing on the left-hand side, but you can remove the right grip, or the left grip of the frame, which is going to be this one here. And you can pull that out and swap it around for left-handed shooters. Fun fact there. The grips obviously are going to be polymer, and I think a slightly different texturing pattern compared to the M92A1, but still that same diamond checker pattern to make it very easy to add any type of texture to you. If you have wet hands, slippery hands, sweaty hands, very easy to control and manipulate. Slightly different texturing on the front and the rear of the frame here. Same full auto or semi-auto selector switch, and that same 2 pin or that 2 screws on the side of the grip for holding that grip onto the frame. And like I said before, the entire frame here is going to be polymer, making it a total weight of 1 pound 14 ounces. 8 ounces difference between these two models specifically, so very, very, very lightweight. They are going to be utilizing the same assembly as far as that spring guide system, so even though it is going to be a polymer construction, it does make it lightweight, and it's still very smooth operation and action for everything else. So don't get too upset just because they went with a different type of material. Some people will say that it is going to be plastic, but it is technically a polymer. So nice and high strength. One thing that I did not mention is that there is a slightly different licensing on the left-hand side of the frame here, or the slide. Right side, wrong part. Left-hand side of the slide, with that same large safety warning on the very right-hand side of that slide. But that's Elite Force being Elite Force. Very similar design with the metal magazines. So much so that I think they are cross-compatible, and they are cross-compatible. So these magazines are cross-compatible. If you needed to get the M92A1 magazine, that does work and function inside of here. And same with the M92A1. The M9A3 magazine does fit slide inside of there and does operate. The only issue is that the extended magazines, they work on the M92A1. The M9A3, however, does not work nearly as well. So there is a sizing difference somewhere with that magazine. I don't know exactly where it is or what the difference is from this to this. I'm not exactly sure, but they don't exactly work back and forth between each other. There are going to be certain online retailers that are going to say that the extended magazine are compatible between these two, but as you just saw in testing, very much not compatible. So you guys know, extended magazines work for the M92A1, not for the M9A3. Now, overall function and performance with these pistols. Both of these are going to be shooting anywhere from 300 feet per second up to 345 feet per second, right at that 350 limit for anyone that's going to be running indoors. So they are going to be running very, very close to that limit. But overall, high velocities compared to other pistols, so you get some performance from that as well. I do have some accuracy results right here of the M9A3 specifically. And this is using two 8-gram BBs. So shooting at a distance of 25, 50, and 100 feet. We do have 5 shots up to the head here, very nicely close at that 25 feet. Then we did aim 50 feet for center mass, and the BBs did drop a little bit, a good 8 inches, 6 inches, and we did get a slightly larger grouping. Now, knocking this out to 100 feet and trying to hit the target, unfortunately, even after adjusting the optic unit to allow a more linear flight path and trying to remain as stable as possible, all 5 shots with the M9A3 did fall short of the target at 100 feet. So what I did was I took the pistol and I aimed a good 2 feet above the head of the target, which means from here, I'm aiming, let me get back so you can see exactly 2 feet. From the tip here, right about there is where I was aiming in order to get these 5 shots on the target, which is why they have a more stretched out vertical distance compared to a horizontal distance. So that is why we had the difference in that shot pattern, just so you guys are aware. And you know, pistols being pistols, you're not going to utilize these for super distance shots anyway. Even at 100 feet, I would be very hard pressed personally to try to pull a pistol out and make that 100-foot confident distance. I would normally go to whatever I was using for a primary, whether that be a rifle or SMG, something with a little bit longer of an inner barrel to get a little bit more flight path consistency. So that's what we have there. It did technically fail first chance at that 100-foot distance, but we did readjust and we were able to get all 5 shots on target. So take that what it was worth. That's what we have as far as accuracy and velocity. Now, over the years that these have been out and on the market, there are a couple of notes that I would like to make personally to make you guys aware as to what could occur to these M9 pistols specifically. I'm going to reiterate a couple of things. These are manufactured by KWC. In our experiences, KWC is a very high-end manufacturer of pistols that last a very, very long time, designed with high-strength parts and components that take a very long time and a lot of force to break down. So we have a lot of good luck with KWC pistols specifically. There have been several generations and iterations of these pistols. The 92A1 went through a couple of changes internally, and the M9A3 went through a couple of changes as well. Different generations to include changes in different parts and components to yield better performance and or durability. For example, on both of these models specifically, in our experiences of players that want to utilize that full auto specifically and use full auto too much, there is a possibility of the action or the force of that slide going backwards excessively, working the screws loose in that ambi safety system and just falling off either on the field or onto the shooter. So that is a concern right there. And some of those internals with the ambi mag or ambi selector or ambi safety, 3rd time's the charm, with some of those internal components with the ambi safety, they do hinge down and protrude just below the slide and interact with that frame system. So if that works itself loose, that can get caught into the hammer assembly and can make things from bad to worse. So on certain players that that has worked itself loose and try to force the slide off, there is that internal component that will either shatter, break, or tear apart other components on the frame assembly if they try to use force to break that apart. So please be aware as to that. Don't try to force these too much. Other internal parts components can break or shear off, especially with that full auto system. One of those things is going to be the cutoff lever or cutoff latch on the, I'm going to actually use this guy, but actually it's actually an issue with this one specifically. So I'm going to go back to this one. So part of the latch system that works with that selector switch can shear itself off and prevent semi-automatic from working effectively, which means even though I am technically in semi-automatic, I don't have this selected in a full auto. So I'm just going to work the system, take the magazine, fire a single shot with that slide release push downwards. So even though that was semi-automatic, the fact that the sear wasn't able to kick back up, engage that slide system, allows it to run on full auto, unfortunately. So the function overall of this being full auto only, despite being on semi, is partially why it is utilized by us as a part system or as a display, as it conveniently is being used for. So that is an issue as well that we have seen. With the M9A3, the very first generation of these that hit the market, did have a history of, with that excessive force, breaking the back part of the slide system, ejecting it off of the slide. Just this back cap here, just boop, gone. So it'll either go into the shooter, so if they're aiming down the sights and shooting excessively, that's going to rocket man back into their face, which is why you always wear eye protection when you are firing any of these. But also that was the first generation. Elite Force did catch it right away, and they were able to make immediate changes to the design of these and made it to where those internal parts, or the part that wasn't, whatever they changed on it, had more material to where that wasn't going to break off. So excellent job on them for catching it and catching it immediately. Kudos to them. On the M9A3 specifically as well, the front iron sight is loose on these and can work themselves loose, which is fine because who uses iron sights in Airsoft anyway? Just watch where your BBs are going. Just kidding. But with this specifically, there is no bottom cap to that set screw to rest against in order to tighten that front iron sight post. So there's a hole on the bottom of the slide where that iron sight sits, and it projects all the way against the barrel. So what happened was, as you can see by this model specifically, if I can get it in the light just right, we had tightened that front iron sight post all the way down, and we were then test firing it, and that iron sight post was just grinding against that slide and just channeled it all the way down through that paint very quickly. So that is an issue as well. Same thing with the M92A1, the M9A3 ambi selectors. Set screws can work themselves loose, especially if you're utilizing that full auto or just using it excessively. So make sure you're taking a Allen screw and you are tightening that one screw on the right hand side of the slide in order to make sure that safety is still tight. And that is the only thing that I have, the only things that I have noticed with the M9 pistols specifically. It's always a hit or miss on these specifically with that threading, because the thread extension is pinned in place of the barrel. It's not an actual extension of the barrel, which means you can rip this threading off. What I have seen is players that utilize a longer length of a mock suppressor or tracer unit, and I'm trying to find a good example. So something like this, I've seen players use a slightly extended model of this. So if they have something like this on there tightened down, which looks super, super cool, and functionally would not hinder operation of the slide, because there is a little bit of space there between the mock suppressor and the actual slide system, I can sit here, and I say mock suppressor because this doesn't actually do anything to dampen sound. It is all just the operation of the slide going backwards and the release of the gas system. But what I have seen a player do by accident is they're firing through a doorway, and if this is the lip or a window, they're firing through a window, and this is the lip of the window, they get shot at and they instinctively duck. Well, there goes all of that immediate reaction force of the mock suppressor going one direction upwards and the barrel of the pistol continuing downwards, breaking that thread extension all the way off, and hindering your cool mock suppressor design. Completely useless. That is one of the other issues that I have seen firsthand with the M9A3, but that's not so much a function of, or a lack of function of the pistol itself, but more of just a very bad accident that has occurred. So that is what we have there. Those are the only couple of things that I would have to say about the M9 pistol specifically that could be a downfall. As long as you maintain these, take care of them, they're going to work out really, really, really well. In fact, I'm a Glock person. I'm a Glock shooter. If you guys don't know, I'm a huge Glock fanboy. So I do lean a little bit more towards the M9A3 specifically because it utilizes that modern polymer frame system compared to the heavier M92A1. Now, that's not to say that the M92A1 is too heavy for me, but if I have to have this on my hip or on my leg, I'm gonna get pretty exhausted with it pretty quickly. I'm not gonna full auto this one. I always forget that this one doesn't have semi-automatic. So I have to use the M9A3. Oh no. So we talked about magazine capacity. With the CO2 specifically, with these being full blowback, we have had to change the CO2 on these guys every 3 magazines. So after 24, 60, almost 70 shots, swap that CO2 out of there, and then you're still good. You've got plenty of pressure there. There's really not much more to say about these M9 pistols. We were putzing around with them. We've had these around the shop for a couple of years, and we've had good success with them. We've had a couple that have been issues, but they have shown themselves pretty quickly within owning these. So we're very confident that if there is some type of manufacturer defect, it'll show itself very, very, very quickly, and that can get warrantied very easily. You're going to want to utilize the warranty period on these guys. There is no aftermarket support when it comes to these. They're KWC, so they are going to be a little bit proprietary in that nature, and the only rebuild kits that Elite Force has for these is going to be the blowback unit housing as well as the magazines themselves. So when it comes to anything else, you're either looking at getting a brand new pistol or trying to find one for parts on the internet. That unfortunately is going to be the nature of the beast. I don't have anything else for you guys about these M9 pistols. We really like them. Good success. They're fun to have. They're fun to shoot. That's all I have. So if you guys have any further questions about the M9 pistol specifically, put them down into the comments section below. I'll do my best to answer each and every single one of those. And we're all set here. So you guys take care, stay safe, stay positive, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.